Okay, this video is going to be geometric series. So we've already done arithmetic, and now we're going to do geometric. Okay, so this is going to be our sum formula this time, where our R is going to stand for the rate that we're increasing by instead of the distance. Our A sub 1 is going to be our first term. Our N is going to be the number of terms. S stands for sum. So to find the number of terms, we might have to use the explicit formula. So A sub N equals A sub 1 times the rate, N minus 1. So we might have to use that to find that N, which is going to be a little bit harder. Okay, so just using the generic sum formula, we have our S of 3. We're going to replace our N's, our R's, and my A sub 1. So my A sub 1 is 1. 1 minus my rate. We're always going to put our rate in parentheses because that's the one that's going to have the exponent going to it, which is the N, and then 1 minus my rate again. Okay, if you have a fraction button on your calculator, I would 100% use that. If you're using the division sign, you have to have parentheses around your top and your bottom to get the correct answer. So there's going to be a lot of parentheses in these if you're using the division sign. Okay, when you type this in, you should get your answer of 7. Okay, so we are finding the sum of the finite geometric series. Okay, so we have our A sub 1, which is 3. We have our last term. We don't know the number of terms, so I'm going to have to use the explicit equation to find the number of terms because I don't know how many. That's what that dot, dot, dot means. So we need to figure out our rate. So remember, the rate is what it's multiplied by in geometric series. Okay, so what multiplies to get from 3 to 6, 6 to 12? Well, we multiply by 2. If you don't know, remember, put this one over this one, or this one over this one, and that will get you your rate. Okay, so we're going to plop that into our explicit equation, which is that A sub n equals A sub 1 rate n minus 1. Remember, A sub n stands for my last term, so 3072 equals my first term, my rate, which is 2, we're going to keep it in parentheses, and then I don't know my n. Okay, we're going to divide both sides by 3 because we're going to try to get that n by itself. So we're going to get rid of the things not attached to it first. So 3072 divided by 3 gets me 1024, and then we still have this 2 to the n minus 1. To get rid of that 2, what we need to do is break down the 1024 to be the same base. Okay, so 2 to the what can get me to 1024. So I'm going to try some things. So 2 to the 5th gets me 32. So I need to think higher than that. 2 to the 8th gets me 256, so higher than that. 2 to the 10th gets me 1024. And then once we have the same base, remember they can cancel, and whatever's left, we set equal. So I'm going to add 1. So my n is 11. Okay? So now I can do my sum formula because my sum formula I need my n, my rate, and my first term, which I now have all of. So I'm doing S of my n equals my A sub 1, which was 3, my 1 minus my rate, which was 2, with my n, and then 1 minus my rate again. So again, if you use the fraction button, you should be good to go. If you use the division, you need to put parentheses around your top and your bottom to make sure that they stay together. When you type it all in, you should get 6,141, which means if I had multiplied this by 2 and I kept going with it and then added all those terms up, it should be 6,141. Okay, my next one looks like my A sub 1 is negative 15. We need to find the rate, so if I could put this over this to figure it out, that's going to be negative 2. I need to find the number of terms. It looks like I could just count it out because there's no dot, dot, dots. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I could just say the number of terms is 6 in this situation instead of plugging it into my explicit formula. And then I can just plop it into my sum formula. So I'm going to do S of 6 is equal to my first term times 1 minus my rate in parentheses to my n all over 1 minus my rate. Okay, so make sure you put your top in parentheses and your bottom in parentheses if you use the division button. This could change to a plus sign if you wanted to put 1 plus 2. So the sum of this one should be 315. So if I added all those up, it would be 315. Okay, so this one's a little bit different. So we need to find our rate, we need to find our first term, and we need to find our number of terms, okay? So my rate is always going to be what's the base that goes to the end. So my rate in this situation is going to be the 1/2. I don't care about what sits in front of it. I need to find the number of terms. So it looks like I go from 0 to 20. So 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 20. So instead of it being the normal 20, which is that high number, there's actually 21 terms. Okay, and then to find my a sub 1, I need to plug in 0 this time because I'm starting it at 0. So I'm going to plug in 0. Anything to the 0 power is 1. 4 times 1 is 4. So there's my first term. Now I can use my sum formula by plugging in all the three things that I needed. So I'm doing s of 21 is equal to my first term, which is 4, 1 minus my rate, which was 1/2, to the 21, all over 1 minus my rate. So when I type that in my calculator, I should get 8. So if I plugged in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 20 into my equation, added them all up, it would be 8. Okay, so this time my rate is going to be -2. I got to plug in 1 to get my first term. So I plop it in for n. 1 minus 1 is 0. Anything to the 0 power is 1, so there's my first term. And then my number of terms, I go from 1 to 10, so there should be 10 of them. Now we just plop it into our sum formula, so s of 10 equals my first term, which was 1, and then 1 minus my rate, which is -2, times my n, all over 1 minus my rate. So again, you can change that to a plus sign. When you type that in your calculator, you should get -341 as your sum. Okay, so just going a little more detailed, if we have a geometric series, we could have it converging or diverging. So converging means if it's between 0 and 1 on the positive side or the negative side, it's going to converge to a small number. So it's going to keep going and going and going, and it's going to get closer and closer to a specific number. If it's bigger than 1, so if my rate is bigger than 1, it's going to diverge, which means it's not going to get, my numbers aren't going to get, when I add them, aren't going to get closer to a number. Okay? If it is converging, to find that number that when I keep adding it, it gets closer and closer to, we're going to use this formula here. Okay, so first off, we need to figure out if it's converging or diverging. So we use, to find the rate, the thing that's attached to n, the base of it. And then we need to take the absolute value of it. Okay, so this is going to become 5/4. If I wanted to find the decimal, I take 5 divided by 4, which is 1.25, and that is greater than 1, so this one is going to diverge. Okay, if it's between 0 and 1, it's going to converge, which means when I add all those sums together, it's going to get closer and closer to the same fraction. Okay, so here's my next one. To find the rate, I could put this over this because it's pretty ugly. So I'm going to take 3/4 divided by 1/2. And it's going to be 3/2, which is actually 1.5, which is greater than 1. So this one is going to diverge again. My next one, I'm going to put this over this, so -1/9 over 1/3. And that's going to equal -1/3, but we always take the absolute value of it. So 1/3, which is less than 1. So this one's actually converging, which means when I add them, it's going to get closer and closer to the same number. So now we're going to figure out what that number is by using that formula. Okay, so we're going to do s equals my first term over 1 minus what my rate was. My original rate was -1/3, so that's what I'm going to plop in there. Okay, 2 negatives will make that a positive. Again, if you use the fraction button, you should be good. If you don't, make sure you use parentheses around these. So when I do all that, I should get 1/4, which means if I keep adding all these numbers up and keep going, it should get closer and closer to 1/4. Okay, my next one, my rate is 2/3. If I take 2 divided by 3, my calculator is 0.67, which is smaller than 1, so it's converging. So when I put it in my calculator, it looks like I need to find my first term, so I'm going to plop that 1 in to find it. So 2/3 to the first power is just 2/3, so that's what my a sub 1 is going to be. So it is 2/3 over 1 minus my original rate, which was 2/3. And that is going to get me 2. So if I plug in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 into that formula, it's going to keep getting closer and closer to the number 2 as I add it. Okay. A game show offers a prize of 1 cent on the first day, 3 cents on the second day, 9 cents on the third day. What is the total amount of prize money earned in 2 weeks? So I know I go from 0.01 to 0.03 plus 0.09 ... And I know there are 2 weeks. So how many days are in a week? We got 7. So for 2 weeks, we got 14 days. So I need to figure out the total after 14 days. So my first day was 1 cent. We need to figure out the rate that it increases by, because I need my rate, my n, and my a sub 1 to find the sum. So I'm going to take 0.03 divided by 0.01 to find that rate. So this over this. So that's 3, and then I can just plug it into my sum formula. So I'm going to do s of my n, which is equal to my first term, 0.01, times 1 minus my rate of 3 to my n power, which is 14, all over 1 minus my rate again. And the total is going to be 23,914.84 cents.